Hi, this is Oswald Sobrino, and I recently published a new book on great thinkers. This great thinker is John Rawls, an American philosopher who was born in 1921 and passed away in 2002. He's famous in political and moral philosophy for writing a classic work published in 1971 called A Theory of Justice. He made major revisions and published that revision in English in 1999. My book comments on his classic and most famous work, A Theory of Justice, in the revised 1999 edition only. He developed his theory for decades until he passed away, almost to the very end. My book doesn't cover those developments because I want to focus on the most famous book that he wrote. And so I give you 5 chapters going through the book. How do I go through the book? It's quite lengthy. But in his introduction or preface to his classic work, Rawls tells us, here's a recommended way for readers to make their way through the book. These chapters. I follow the recommendation of Rawls. And that's why I'm able to write a 50 or 60 page commentary on this book using that map, which focuses on attention on the chapters that Rawls tells us are the most important. Why is he important? We live in a time of rising authoritarianism all over the world, even unfortunately in the United States, something that most of us never thought would ever happen. We have an idea that certain people or leaders are above the law, and whatever they say is the law. That's tyranny, to put it bluntly. Rawls inspires us to go back to our liberal, democratic, constitutional heritage and tradition and see that a constitutional democracy can deliver a fair and just life for everyone, including the least advantaged, which is a phrase he uses often. So he writes in the social contract tradition of political philosophy, in which you have a hypothetical situation, not a historical situation, but hypothetical, where people or representatives come together to agree on what kind of commonwealth or society they're willing to join in and be part of. And that's a tradition made famous by John Locke, by the French thinker Rousseau, and by the great philosopher Immanuel Kant. In my opinion, Immanuel Kant is the major influence on Rawls. Not too long ago, I also wrote a book on Kant's ethics. I recommend that. It's not a prerequisite to reading this book on Rawls, but it's great supplementary reading on these topics of ethics and politics. What does Rawls do for us? He gives us 2 principles that representatives meeting together in a hypothetical situation would choose for a just and fair society. And the fairness is guaranteed because these representatives gather together. Rawls calls this stage of choosing the principles the original position. But how to guarantee fairness in those principles that are chosen? Rawls ingeniously gives us the veil of ignorance. The veil of ignorance means the representatives gathering do not know their own particular social and economic and political position in the society, nor do they know those specific traits of the people they're representing. So they can't make decisions in their self-interest that are biased for rich people because they don't know if they're rich, for people of a certain religion because they don't know what religion they will have, for people of certain abilities, they don't know what their natural abilities will be. So the veil of ignorance is crucial in this original position where you're designing the just society, picking the principles that define the basic social structure of the just society. And Rawls gives us 2 major principles. The first one secures equal basic liberties for all. Those liberties and freedoms as we have, for example, in the Bill of Rights in the United States. Political participation, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience. Those are secured. And that principle is the priority principle, meaning nothing can be done to infringe on those principles unless there's an extreme situation, extenuating situation. But basically, those are untouchable. Equal basic liberties, principle number 1. So we can call what Rawls is giving us, a liberal constitutional democracy, if we take liberal in the sense of those basic liberties as guaranteed. But Rawls gives us a sophisticated model for the just society. Liberal also in the sense that Rawls appears to take it at times social democratic, meaning a special focus on eliminating injustice toward the least advantaged, toward the poor, toward those who are most vulnerable. Eliminating what Rawls views as the arbitrary advantages that we get simply because of the family we were born in, or the social class, or how much income we had. So he wants to eliminate those arbitrary barriers that can keep people out of the good life by being born in a dysfunctional situation, being born in extreme poverty. He wants to neutralize that. So the second principle says, if there are going to be, we're going to start from equality in the original position, but if there are going to be inequalities in this just society, those inequalities must benefit the least advantaged. And if they benefit the least advantaged, they'll benefit everyone in between. That's the social democratic or social justice focus in the second principle. So in that sense, that's another dimension of being liberal, protecting civil liberties, basic liberties, as in principle one, but liberal also in the second principle of taking care of the least advantaged, trying to eliminate the influence of arbitrary class distinctions to attain social justice. And Rawls gives us those two principles in great detail. He's a rigorous philosopher. And so when I do my commentary, his theory of justice is a very lengthy book, but Rawls recommends at the beginning of the book a certain route for readers, pointing out he recommends certain chapters as important to capture the heart of his classic work, A Theory of Justice. And that's the route I take. And covering those chapters that Rawls recommends as significant and crucial, I'm able to do a 50 to 60 page commentary on it. Of course, I encourage everyone to go to the original work, to read it, and to read all of it, if you wish. Or certainly, or maybe just read the parts that Rawls pointed out are important and that I comment in this book. In my series on lessons from great thinkers, I always encourage readers to go back to the original book, to the primary source, and read it for themselves. And you will be inspired. He has a strong belief that we are all equal in dignity. He also has a strong belief that the just society needs to promote the good, the primary social good of self-respect. Because from a Kantian point of view, everyone, including ourselves, merits self-respect, because we have equal dignity as rational human beings. And in Rawls, you see this grand moral vision, protecting liberty, protecting the least vulnerable, because all of us are equal rational beings. No one is above the law. And that's needed today, because there seems to be an amnesia about tyranny, and we seem to be falling back into tyranny as if we no longer appreciate or realize what value having liberties preserved, taking care of the least advantaged are, morally and socially. The just society is a society that will be stable. That's very important for Rawls, to design a just society that he can show will be stable and will prosper and will continue and be functional and lead to people, setting the framework for people to realize their talents and abilities. And self-respect is central to that, because Kant tells us, treat others as ends, never as means, but it's not just others. Do not treat yourself as a mere means. Always treat yourself as an end as you treat others as ends, not as mere means. And Rawls completely absorbs that Kantian insight and develops it into his theory of justice. So this is an exciting work, although it's an academic work, and you can refresh your memory about the importance of liberty and equal justice and fairness in a liberal constitutional democracy in which no person, regardless of their office or their wealth, is above the law. So I strongly recommend Rawls, especially in these times of an unfortunate amnesia about liberty and returning to disastrous forms of political authoritarianism. Thank you.